So we're constantly kind of thinking of creative ideas, like how can we disrupt the industry? How can we be involved in this? What can we do that will be different than what everyone else is doing?
Here we are, Location Luxe. I'm your host, Alan Canas, and here in Season 1, we'll be focused on what we're calling the Great Lifestyle Migration. On each episode, I'll be right here in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. Over the last few decades, we've witnessed a great migration for employment and technology development. As such, the need and demand for homes has been among the highest in the country. These migration choices are giving people an extraordinary opportunity to explore new locations, amenities, and lifestyle options. And that's why we're here. Location Luxe. This week, I am so delighted to welcome the fabulous Maureen McDermut, who is a top real estate agent from Santa Barbara, who is on location. Maureen, thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you, share my knowledge of Santa Barbara with everybody who's watching.
We can't wait. Maureen, today you're going to take us through how Santa Barbara is so much more than a destination location. It is a beautiful lifestyle. But Maureen, before you do that, please tell us a little bit about you. And Maureen, what was your draw? Why did you move there? Why did you relocate your family here?
It really was happenstance. 20 years ago, I'm from Los Angeles, and my husband was offered a job up here. And when I said to my friends, oh, I think we might move to Santa Barbara. And even though it was only an hour and a half north of where I lived, I actually had not been to Santa Barbara very much. So when my husband said, do you want to move? I'm like, sure. We needed a bigger house. We have a growing family. And I thought, okay, an hour and a half is not that far. He's not in the same job now, but it's what kept us here. It's just the beauty. And my children, although they were born not in Santa Barbara, they consider this their hometown.
Maureen, when you and I have been talking previously, we've talked about people migrating to Santa Barbara. What is the draw? Why are so many people choosing to migrate there? What's the buzz about?
I think the buzz is that a lot of people that are moving here are within California already, particularly after the ability to work out of your house and COVID started. People were like, wow, I am only an hour and a half north of Los Angeles, so you can easily still work in Los Angeles and live in Santa Barbara, and a 20-minute air flight from San Francisco. So when people realized I don't have to work and live in the same community, I want to go live where I want to really live. And that is, for a lot of people, Santa Barbara, because it is still accessible to where their job may be while they're not working remote. And I think that a lot of people see the value here. We have a plethora of arts and lecture series that are fabulous. We have great museums. We have a fantastic little zoo. So it's really the best of both worlds. It's a small city that lives big.
It sounds amazing. And what seasonal activities do you have? I know you have wineries. What else do you have as well?
You know, the funny thing is, we don't really have seasons. I mean, yes, we have winter, spring, summer, fall, but because our median temperature is really 72 degrees year-round, our hiking is fabulous. I mean, if you're into hiking, it's one of the best places to go hiking. Bicycling, we are a huge bike community. Our beaches are stunning. So, of course, you have year-round is one of the best surf spots. Rincon Beach, which is a little bit south of us in Ventura County, is one of the best view spots in the world. You know, kayaking. The ocean sports are huge. It's just a really great, gentle community.
could you tell us a little bit about the culture, the downtown restaurants?
Oh gosh, we have great restaurants. Gene Montesano, who owns Lucky's, is famous. Great Italian. We have Indian. We have Spanish. I mean, you name it. You're going to get the culinary palates will all be fulfilled.
Tell us a little bit about the schools, especially since you raised 2 children there.
Wow, we have great schools. I'll start with the university level. UCSB is located right on the ocean. I mean, how great would that be to go to college or university and just look at the ocean every day? Then we have Santa Barbara City College, which is the #1 rated city college in the nation. We have Westmont College, that is a smaller private Christian college located in Montecito. And then our high schools, we have 3 public high schools. And then as the grammar school level in Montecito, Cold Springs is the #1 rated grade school in the state of California. They have a selection of schools here for everybody.
Maureen, talk about access to flights, commutability. How are people commuting back and forth around the country to Santa Barbara?
Well, the nice part about Santa Barbara is that we have our own, the cutest little airport you will ever see. And as the planes come back into action, what's nice is that we have direct flights to and from the following cities. Let me share with you. Direct flights to Los Angeles, direct flights to San Francisco, direct flights to Portland and Seattle. Now we're flying to Las Vegas, and direct flights to Chicago. We do have a weekly flight that I think is coming back to Minnesota. And what happens is we have a direct flight to Dallas. So we have a pretty good selection of places where you can jump off to.
And where do you think most of the buyers are coming from right now?
Predominantly, our buyers are coming from Los Angeles and San Francisco. And a lot of that is because they can still access their workplace if they need to. People come here at different times of the year, and more often than not, it's to get away from their own weather. One of the things, the #1 reason I think people like to live here is because of our weather.
Let's talk about architectural design. What are you seeing in regards to architectural design today?
Well, a lot of people are drawn to Santa Barbara for the architectural design, which is very much of a Spanish influence. We have a lot of signature architects that are noted. George Washington Smith, Reginald Johnson, Windsor Soul, the list goes on. And their homes built from the 20s and 30s are really statement pieces that identify that whole Spanish feeling. There's no lack of red tile roofs in Santa Barbara. What we're starting to see a little bit as people remodel or build a new home, the new look is becoming really more of a modern farmhouse look. And then, of course, a lot of people always say, I want a house that looks like the San Ysidro Ranch, which is one of the most revered destination spots to stay as a hotel. So really we have contemporary, heavy Spanish, mid-farmhouse. We have Victorian downtown. So really any style you're going to find it here.
And Maureen, what are you seeing in regards to inventory? Are you seeing developments?
We've not seen a lot of developments. We don't have a lot of land. I mean, as I was saying before, the shortest distance from Montecito, from the ocean to the mountains, is only 1.5 miles long, to the base of the mountain, I should say. And then we're 12 miles long from Carpinteria to Goleta. So it's not a lot of land. So we don't have a lot of new developments, but we do have people who buy houses and then we will remodel their house, or they'll build a new house.
Are you seeing multiple offers?
Oh, yes, on every price point level. I mean, it's not unheard of. Every single price point is seeing multiple offers. And I'm talking about up to $20 million, multiple offers.
That's amazing. What is Santa Barbara seeing in regards to appreciation year over year?
Year over year, I would say that Santa Barbara has gone up at least 20%. Montecito's probably gone up about 30%.
Wow.
35%. It's insane. These numbers are insane. I believe that what's happening today in Santa Barbara, this is a resetting of our prices. This is not an inflationary thing that's going to come back down. And some people will say, "Oh, I'm going to wait to buy a house," and I'm thinking, I wouldn't wait. This is a resetting of our prices.
I have said exactly the same thing here in
Yeah.
the San Francisco Silicon Valley. It is a resetting. If you wait, you're going to be in the "I wish I woulda" category.
I hear that. I'm already hearing that.
Yeah. Maureen, let's talk about condition when they see a house on the market.
Every condition. I mean, the majority of the houses here are in very good condition, excellent condition. Not very good, they're in excellent condition. Of course, we also often have trust sales, and the house will go on the market and somebody's lived there for 50 years and the trust just sell it. So for the most part, what I do find is most people like to come into Santa Barbara and make their own imprint on the house they're purchasing. So it doesn't matter if a house is in perfect condition. Somebody will easily come in and redo the whole house because they want it to be their statement.
And when I think of Santa Barbara, and a lot of people think of Santa Barbara actually, they think Santa Barbara is high-end vacation, resort living, and they think of grandeur. Can you tell us what price points we can expect at Santa Barbara?
Let's start with different areas. In Carpinteria, the entry level is about $900,000. In Montecito, your entry level is $2 million. In Santa Barbara, your entry level is about $1 million. In Goleta, it is entry level is probably $900,000, $1 million.
So you got
the numbers go all the way up.
And then they go up.
Yeah, in Montecito, your entry level is $2 million. The highest priced house right now, I think, is $75 million.
So it goes the gamut. So which is it can be affordable.
It can be, yeah.
Okay, Maureen, it's that time for one of my favorite questions that I always ask, your favorite buyer story. And if I remember right, it has something to do with your husband. So do tell.
Okay, it is kind of funny. So we moved up here, and you know, as everybody, when you start your real estate journey, you always have a budget, right? So we started looking, and our budget just kept going up. We were looking around, and we went at first, and we're in an area called Hope Ranch. Hope Ranch is a beautiful part of Santa Barbara. It has its own private beach. It has horse trails throughout the community, and very much of a horse community. And so we looked at a house. It was a little bit over the budget my husband wanted to pay. He was hemming and hawing. So the agent says to us, and I had hired an agent even though I had my own real estate license because I was new to the area and I wanted to have an expert. She goes, well, you know what, let me take you down to the private beach in Hope Ranch. And we said, great. So we walked down to the private beach and we're standing there. It was a glistening, really beautiful Saturday morning. We looked out and there was this beautiful luxury yacht sitting out there. And we're looking at it going, wow, that is like beautiful. And as we turn to the right, on the beach comes a person on a horse, horseback riding. And my husband looks at the yacht, he looks at this person on the horse, and he looks at the agent and said, write it up. So it makes me laugh. That's not the house that we wound up buying because, yes, it was a multiple offer situation. And that was 20 years ago. So we didn't get it, but that's probably my favorite buyer story.
That's great. Yeah. Love it. So Maureen, I need to thank you for being on this episode of Location Luxe. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Alan, for taking the time as well.
Hi, welcome to Metropolis Sustainable Product Spotlight. I'm Senior Editor Kelly Beeman, and in this episode, we're learning some of the lesser known details of Krypton's green history. Krypton is widely known for its fabric treatments, which add durability and stain resistance to so many products, including those from Arcom, DesignTV, and Birch Fabrics, among others. But perhaps you didn't realize how eco-friendly Krypton's products are. Well, its fabric technology is Green Guard Gold certified. Its products are free of halogenated flame retardants, and the company maintains a program for recycling manufacturing remnants. It also just introduced ePure, the world's first environmental polyurethane that's made using a totally water-based production process. To tell us more is my good friend Julia Gillespie, Krypton's Vice President of Marketing, who agreed to sit down with me today. Thank you again for joining us, Julia.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. We're excited to tell everyone about some of our new technologies we've been developing, especially during this past year, which has been such an interesting year for all of us, especially in this market.
Yes, no kidding. No kidding. And given Krypton's far-reaching role in the design industry, touching so many different products, I feel that we probably have quite a few innovations to cover today. So I'll let you guide us on this journey. Start, if you don't mind, with this latest green news about ePure.
Sure. So ePure is interesting because one of the sort of ironies of ePure is that Krypton was created to replace vinyl and vinylized fabrics 28 years ago. And so because prior to that, any textile in a high use application was a vinyl or a vinylized fabric, and Craig and Randy Rubin set out to create a woven fabric solution that could withstand the wear and tear of high use spaces. Thus Krypton was created. It was the first fabric that was stain and moisture resistant. And they really created the entire performance fabric category. So fast forward 28 years, we're introducing ePure, which is a coated fabric. But we listen to the marketplace, we pay attention to what's happening. And there really was a need for an EPU that was super durable. So everything we do at Krypton, performance and aesthetics are sort of equal. So everything we do, we try to make sure it's beautiful, it's soft, it's livable, but it has a very high performance attributes. ePure is something we developed to satisfy that. So ePure is the first water-based EPU on the market. It uses an innovative water-based system. And what it does is that most polyurethanes are produced with something called DMF. It's a solvent, but it's dimethylamide, and it's DMF, and it's a solvent. It's on the red list. It's in most polyurethanes and often in some vinyls, and it does require, a Prop 65 label, et cetera, et cetera. So we worked to create to create a product that was free of that, but still had high durability, and that is ePure. And some interesting facts about ePure. Like all Krypton fabrics, it's Green Guard Gold certified. It's free of everything. Obviously, it's Prop 65 compliant. It's on the mindful materials list. But it's incredibly durable. It's a million double rubs, and it's stain resistant, and it even resists the nemesis of all nemesis, which is denim dye transfer. Okay. So it's really an incredible product. We're just releasing it on the market now with our open line, and then DesignTV launched the first ePure collection. It's called Tilt and Nest, and it's beautiful. And another great thing about ePure is it can be embossed and it can be printed on.
Okay.
So it's a really great new product. I think, I see it really in healthcare, but I think, in certain applications in hospitality as well. It's a great product, and it meets sort of all the needs, I think, for today's designers.
And just to backtrack a little bit, could you share any of the steps that occurred in the development of the process for making it, especially this great water-based?
Basically what it is, and a lot of times when they're making polyurethane, they have to use DMF or a solvent or a plasticizer to bind all the agents together. That's what they do. And then sometimes what they'll do is they'll do it all and then they'll rinse it off. So they'll rinse the DMF off, and then they'll say, well, then it's an EPU because it's DMF free, but it was made with DMF, but then the DMF was removed. And to do that, it's obviously a lot of water waste. and they're also putting that DMF back into the water chain. So with ours, it is a water-based system that's used to bind it. And then all the water that is used in creating ePure is reclaimed.
Oh, that's great. That's great to know. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the features? I mean, you mentioned that it's great for that denim transfer, which is a problem in my life.
Right, it is. So some common problems with polyurethanes, and I've definitely taken a crash course in polyurethanes this year, is it's they call it puddle proof, so that it doesn't puddle during upholstery. You know, it's formaldehyde, phthalate, and BPA free. It's free of all PFOA, PFOS, PFAS. It's inherently antimicrobial, so there's no additive. Polyurethane by nature is an antimicrobial material. It's bleach cleanable, it's alcohol cleanable. So really, I mean, in my head, it's not on the red list. It like literally meets sort of like, if you're looking for the perfect vinyl and or polyurethane solution that meets all the sustainable standards, it is ePure. And then on the design side, it's almost limitless because it can be embossed, because it can be printed on. So DesignTV has a beautiful print, and then they have a lovely range of solids that are they're also printed, and they have a really nice modeled color play. And then we're launching one called Box Step, which is an embossed box pattern, which is really beautiful. And then the touch, it's like very, very soft. Like, let's show you, like it's like super duper soft. And it's like this very pliable, lovely material.
How many, I guess it's limitless possibly, but I'm wondering how many different patterns can you do?
So with our distributors, they can work with us to develop their own. And that's why we announced it a little bit early in terms of, because it's going to be available with our open line in a few weeks, but we wanted people to know, because if you want to develop your own, you can work with our sales and design teams and develop your own patterns, your own embossed patterns, etc. So it is really limitless. And even like if you had a client who was, in hospitality or healthcare who wanted a specific color, specific logo, specific pattern, we can work with them to do that.
Okay. And I guess I want to possibly depart a little bit. Can we talk about your recycled cotton product?
So that's also brand new. And we just launched our first collection at High Point at Showtime for High Point for the residential market. And we're developing our own patterns as well for the commercial contract market as well. It's called Recover, is the partner we're working with. Okay. And this is a partnership with our mill. So in 2019, in the late fall of 2019, Krypton purchased Abercrombie Mills, which really allowed us to become more vertical and also, I think, sort of pull some reliance away from overseas, do more domestic manufacturing. We also wanted to ensure that we preserved a lot of jobs in that area. And since then, we've done a lot of work with the mill, new yarns, new innovations. We have an amazing design team down there. It's incredible, and it's really enhanced our capabilities for both our distributors and for our partners on the residential side. So together, we're working with this company who basically it's a very interesting story. So they create recycled cotton fibers, and how they do it is it's a very sophisticated process where they take post-consumer apparel, some mostly post, and also some industrial waste as well. And they separate it out by texture, by color, by fiber type. They shred it, they crush it, and then they create, and they do this as they have the longest fiber chains, and then they create this recycled cotton fibers, which are 50 to 70% recycled cotton fibers. Then that is spun into yarn, and then obviously we're weaving it into fabric. So for us, it's a really innovative process. The thing that's so interesting about it is that because there's only like 1% of fashion waste is recycled. So, from their perspective, they have unlimited resources because they come in. And then what I think is also interesting is that people have never really associated cotton with Krypton because cotton's so absorbent. But because of our process at our plant, then we can actually take those fabrics and create Krypton out of them. So they are stain resistant. On the residential side, it's the hand is lovely. It's just, they're really beautiful fabrics. And on the residential side, I almost see it like a no-brainer, like you get to have your cake and eat it too. And on the contract side, because it is cotton and Krypton's still a fabric, so there is going to be some, we'll take it to 50%, 50,000 double rubs. Sorry, so we'll take it to 50,000 double rubs, and nothing on the contract. Almost everything on the contract side for Krypton is 100,000. But I see our cotton as a really great solution for higher end hospitality, some of those resi-mercial installations, and the sky's the limit. And so some of the patterns we're doing they're just beautiful, and it's really exciting to see Abercrombie and Krypton, like we're teaming up together and really coming out with some new innovations.
That's awesome. Could you tell me a little bit about how you think a specifier can decide whether that cotton would be good in a contract environment?
So I think it really depends. There's several factors. So it depends on your space. It depends on the use of the space. And so we have several different technologies even beyond all of these. So we have all these factors to consider. So if you want, on the contract side, if you have a client who insists on it being HHI compliant, then we have a technology called C0, which is 100% fluorine free. It's very stain resistant, but it does not resist oil-based stains. So you can specify that or Krypton. And then Krypton technology, we've leveraged C0 into our normal Krypton technology and taken the fluorine level down to 0.1%.
Oh.
So we've worked really hard. Our chemists, we really are taking a less is more approach to our chemistry, and really every fabric is customized. So it's not a one size fits all. So everything has to meet our standards and everything is tested before it leaves the plant. But we really want to be mindful and be honest and upfront, so that the designer knows what they're getting and the designer has the choice. And we always say it sort of comes down to oil and water, because fluorine's the only thing that resists oil. It's a natural element, and it's the only thing in the universe right now that we can find. And there's a lot of chemists worldwide who are trying to crack the fluorine nut, and we are too. But if you don't want fluorine or you don't need that oil resistance, you go to C0. So the same thing with our performance cotton. It really depends on the client's needs and the use. So if you have a high use abuse space, we would recommend full Krypton with a moisture barrier. And I would typically recommend a fiber base of a polyester or polyester blend. And on the cotton side, it'll be like 50 to 70% recycled cotton, and then it'll probably be 30 to 50% polyester. And if you have a space where you need stain resistance, perhaps, but you don't need 100 or 200,000 double rubs, then cotton would be beautiful.
Okay, that sounds great.
And sustainable.
Yes. And can you touch on, you mentioned the idea of saving or cutting out water waste, reducing that waste. What are some other things just that we can highlight in the manufacturing process?
So at our plant, we take it really seriously, and the team who runs our plant is incredible, and they've made it a big priority to recycle almost everything that enters the building. So that means cardboard, plastic, fabric waste, trims, all raw materials. So all of our trims, all of our fabric waste is taken and recycled immediately. But they also recycle, with our technology, like they'll take any runoff and they'll refine it and then recycle it. All water at the plant for all of our processes is reclaimed. And then this year on the energy use, we went through and we did sort of a huge overhaul. We replaced all the lighting in the plant with an LED, a low wattage LED system, which is saving $15,000 to $20,000 a year on electricity cost, but it's also reducing heat in the summer because it doesn't radiate up. And they're just continually making steps in all of our facilities now, because Abercrombie are about to do the same thing, where we're really working to cut down on our use of electricity, gas, reclaim the water, and just be as mindful as we can during the manufacturing process to make it as clean and refined as possible. And it's pretty incredible when you go to our plant or Abercrombie, like it's very clean, like everything is, it's kind of incredible in just terms of how even those steps as it refined everything else.
So being more sustainable also makes it
because when everything has a goal to make sure that you're reducing all of your waste,
you don't have stuff lying around.
You reduce your clutter.
I wish I could do that at home.
Yeah, I know.
I have to say, I just want to add this as an end note. I really like the fact that Krypton is taking steps to increase the percentage of its textiles that are fully made in the United States. I think that just adds to its sustainability profile. And it's just so helpful to know this green side of Krypton's story. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Kelly. It's been a pleasure seeing you and speaking with you.
Oh, me too. And thank you to everyone for joining us for Metropolis Sustainable Product Spotlight with Krypton.
Edward Mazria is an internationally renowned architect, author, researcher, and educator. His research into urbanization, climate change, sustainability, and energy in the built environment has redefined and dramatically expanded the role of architecture, planning, design, and building in reshaping our world. He delivered the keynote address for Buildings Day at COP21 in Paris and issued and presented the roadmap to zero emissions. He is the founder and CEO of Architecture 2030, a think tank developing real-world solutions for the 21st century problems, and a recent recipient of the 2021 AIA Gold Medal. It's my pleasure to welcome Ed Mazria.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you. Well, let's get started. I'll share my screen and you should see it up right now. Let me know when you see it up.
We're good.
We're good to go. Okay,
Yeah.
Let's get started. We have a lot to go through. So the first thing, there was a saying by a very famous baseball catcher: if you don't know where you are going, you'll end up someplace else. We don't want to end up someplace else, and I'll tell you why. The difference between 1.5 degrees C planetary warming, which you hear a lot about, and 2 degrees C are two very different futures. And that difference is dramatic. If we go from 1.5 to 2, if we don't meet the 1.5 and we go to 2, 1.7 billion more people will be exposed to severe heat waves every 5 years. 100 to 400 million more people would be at risk for hunger. 1 to 2 billion more people, so this is going from 1.5 to 2, will no longer have adequate water, and 1 billion people may be forced to migrate, something we don't want to happen. So we need to stay at the 1.5. We know what the issue is. It's burning fossil fuels and putting CO2 in the atmosphere. The carbon budget for 1.5 is 340 gigatons. That's how much we have left. Today, we put out about 40 gigatons globally of CO2. You've all heard about peaking emissions now and phasing out in 2050. That's 600 gigatons. That gives us less than a 50% probability of staying under 2 degrees. So we've essentially lost a good 5 to 10 years in terms of getting at this issue. Now, the Biden administration is calling for a 50% reduction by 2030. If you follow that line straight down, they're calling for phasing out by 2050, but if you follow that line straight down, they phase out by 2040. That's 400 gigatons, getting us real close to the 340 and a much better than 50% chance of meeting the 1.5. To actually meet the 1.5 with a high probability, we need a 65% and a phase out by 2040. So the Biden administration is actually on target, because every 5 years when there's another COP, they increase their ambition. All countries are expected to increase their ambition in 2025 and in 2030 again. So we should see that curve drop. So we think we will be in good shape, at least the US, and we think the rest of the world will follow. So can we meet the 1.5? How hard is this? And, people are saying, it's very difficult, it's too difficult, maybe we passed it. Well, in the built environment, which is responsible for most of the emissions, so we are a majority of emissions globally, it's the built environment. it consists of three things: new buildings, existing buildings, and then materials and construction. So let's say, what do we have to do for new buildings? Well, we just have to put in place zero carbon code standards. It's as simple as that, and we now have them. So we have a zero code. The IECC adopted the zero code and put it into the 2021 IECC. China just developed a zero code, and the European Commission directed all the countries to begin implementing a zero code this year. So we're starting to see that happen. We just need to get it adopted very, very quickly. What is a zero code? It's a no-brainer. You take the existing building code standard. All the new standards are really efficient. They're very good. You take that, you design an efficient building, you go even further using passive systems and all sorts of things, daylighting, if you need to, and then, or if you want to, and then address the remaining buildings needs with on-site renewables, and you get as much as you can. And if you can't, then you go to off-site. But that off-site has to be attributed to your building. You do that, you're at zero carbon. You can go to zero-code.org and read all about that. What about existing buildings? There are trillions of existing buildings out there. How are we going to get all those to zero? Well, it's a no-brainer. You do efficiency where you can. You electrify, get rid of the natural gas on site or the heating oil. You electrify the buildings, and you produce that electricity with renewables. The great thing about the administration now is they want to go to a clean grid by 2035. So the country is moving. And we've discovered something really interesting to get at all the buildings. How do we get all the buildings? Well, in New York, about 2% of buildings are over 50,000 square feet, a little bit more than 2%. But they're located in three areas: Midtown, Lower Manhattan, and downtown Brooklyn. And that small number of buildings, there are 1 million buildings in New York. This is only 26,000 of them, are responsible for almost half of all New York City's emissions, about 2%. We see that in every single major city in the world. You can see in Chicago, the big buildings along the waterfront, and then miles of small buildings. Look at Philadelphia, the same thing. If you look at Los Angeles, you see downtown LA, big buildings, and then miles and miles of small buildings. Same thing in Sydney, Australia, same thing in Guangzhou, China, same thing in Istanbul, Turkey. So 50% of the emissions are produced by these very, very, very big buildings. So how do we create policies? Well, we first create an existing buildings policy. Whoops. And so the first thing we have to do is establish an emissions threshold in floor area and square meters or square feet of big buildings responsible for about 50% of building sector emissions. You go from the largest buildings down. When you hit 50%, that's the threshold. You require them, you establish a policy, and you require them to get to zero carbon by 2030. You give them 9 years to do it. People who own these huge buildings have the wherewithal to do it and have the financing and the money to do it. But you provide incentives for them to do it. And for those who don't, you provide more incentives. Everything from fast track permitting, low interest loans, tax abatements, all the way to equipment discounts, going from boilers, gas boilers to heat pumps. How do you get it to all these other buildings? Well, to establish a policy for the millions of small buildings, you require the same thing. Only you require them at building intervention points, a zoning or use change. When you go in, you get to zero carbon. Point of renovation, at point of sale. So if you're selling a building, the new owner has to so you get lots of buildings converted very quickly. You do those two things, and you get at the entire existing building sector. The beautiful thing about that is if you renovate a building, you're less likely to demolish it, and that saves a huge amount of embodied carbon. Now let's talk about embodied carbon. So this is materials, construction, and infrastructure. There are literally millions of materials to choose from when designing a building or building a building. How do we get a handle on all these millions of materials? Well, if you look at industry, it's responsible for 43% of all global emissions. And that's everything. That's spoons and forks and dishes and eyeglasses and your phone and all the building materials and enclosure and systems and lighting and plumbing and everything. All that falls into industry. How do we get a handle on that? It seems daunting, but we reshape the pie. And all of a sudden, two materials, concrete and steel, are responsible for 50% of all industrial emissions. It's the same as big buildings, small buildings. So if we get a handle on those two right away, we have to 2040 to get carbon out of all the rest of the materials worldwide, and we can start on that. So that sounds really now doable. So now what do we do? Well, the first thing we have to do is change the conversation. If we don't know about it, then we're not going to do anything. Well, mainstream media has picked it up. Concrete, the most destructive material on earth. Steel makers, next in the crosshairs as climate pressure grows. These two industries are feeling huge amount of pressure, and they're not sitting still now. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But all of a sudden, zero carbon cement, is that possible? All of a sudden, we're seeing, yes, we know that we can do that. US Steel aims to achieve net zero by 2050. They're 10 years too late, but we'll push them to do it sooner. But you're starting to see movement now. And why? Because mass timber is giving them heartburn, because it's an alternative. And we're starting to see many of our firms go to mass timber for structure and things like that, and they lose market share. And so you're seeing a little bit of a war going on, but it's healthy and it's driving everyone to lower emissions. So what can you do as architects, designers, planners? The greenest building, of course, is one that's already built. So renovate, repurpose, reuse materials. That saves a huge amount of energy and emissions. Land use boundaries, infill. We know that densification is not a COVID spreader. You can specify low carbon materials. There's all sorts of tools out there now, and more coming on the line. Very, very exciting. And policies are beginning to now take shape. Or you can substitute and use a glue laminated timber. Glue laminated bamboo all of a sudden is beginning to take off in the global south. Sequestering carbon in concrete through aggregate and injection, biomaterials, and let's not forget landscapes and soil and urban agriculture actually drawing down. So can we meet the 1.5? This was 1891. This is Toronto. That's what it looked like. All 3-story buildings, masonry walls, very small rooms. You had to go wall to wall with structure. This is what it looks like today. That was in 2010. You see all these skyscrapers. They could be anywhere in the world. Same thing has happened everywhere. So how did all that take place, and how long did it take to transform the built environment? Well, the first modern building was in Germany in 1925. It's considered the first one, was the Bauhaus, where structure moved inside. You had columns now rather than masonry walls. So now you can hang the exterior wall, bring light in, open up the floor plan, and create large interior spaces. That was in 1925. What was going on in 1925? It's pretty primitive. We didn't even have a transatlantic call till 27, no television, and we had the Model T truck. So that was back then. That's when it all started in 1925. Conditions were really bad in Europe, and all the architects and planners of the day got together in Europe and created a modern movement, essentially, and they created guidelines for essentially utopian reform, environmental reform, function-based zones, get the housing out of the cold and industrial areas, high-rise housing blocks, solar exposure. And Le Corbusier laid out his principles, moving columns inside, hanging walls. That all took place beginning in 1928. By 32, it made its way over to the US, and we had the international style at the Museum of Modern Art. Buildings can be built anywhere because we can climate control them. We had the beautiful Johnson Wax building by 39, and then by 49, by 52, Skidmore did the Lever House single glass building, beautiful building in downtown New York, structure moved inside, and the world changed. So between 1925 and 1952 was only 27 years. And we made that transformation with these tools. No computer. We didn't even have an ink pen. We didn't even get an ink pen to draw with until 1960. You had to scrape off the ink. You had to scrape off the ink off your drawings. It took a year and a half to do a set of construction documents. And think what we can do today. The first laptop didn't come into 1991. Solar is now the cheapest electricity in history around the world. And this is where we are now. The US building sector has been dropping its emissions since 2005. Since 2005, we had not increased our energy consumption in the entire building sector. In the US, we've dropped it about 5%, and we've reduced our emissions by 30% already to 2020. And if Biden makes good on the clean grid by 2035, we will be down about 70%, because look how much electricity the building sector uses by the year 2030, and we should easily phase out by 2040. This is the success story that we hope to take in to the UN climate change meeting in Glasgow in November. So can we meet the 1.5 degrees carbon budget? Of course we can. Thank you.